Yo, what's up guys? Fellowship has been out for about a week now, and one of the biggest complaints or biggest problems that I've seen people talking about is that they're struggling with the progression. They're struggling with going through the ranks. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to do sort of a beginner's guide or a progression guide on how to go from, the basic levels of contender, the early levels of contender, all the way through to Paragon and eventually through to Eternal mode. So I would say there are two big roadblocks to get over, and that is going from contender to adept. As soon as you hit the end of contender and the start of adept, it's like two different games. It really does step up mechanics. It steps up in how important your gear is and how important your game knowledge is. And then I would say coming from champion to Paragon is another pretty steep change in the difficulty as well. So that's what I wanted to go over. I wanted to talk about, some tips to improve your gameplay, improve your ability for your team to get through the dungeons, and then some general tips to improve yourself, gearing, itemization, things like that. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so first let's do a full gearing guide. Assuming you know nothing about the gear in Fellowship, let's talk about how to master the gear system. So when it comes to gearing, every time you go through a new league, you are introduced to a new type of itemization. So if you click this eye up here, you can get into the information, and you'll see here, Contender League gives you basic gear and weapon sets. So tier sets. So if you have two of the same tier set, you get that bonus. So for example, there might be like a glove and a chest piece. If you have them both, you get a bonus to your haste or something like that. Adept will introduce gems, socketed gear, and weapons with abilities. Champion will add weapons with unique weapon traits, and then Paragon reveals legendary weapons of immense power, right? So it's important that as you go through the different leagues, you are getting these new items. If you're coming into Champion and you still don't have your weapon abilities, or you still don't have, any gem sockets, you're going to run into problems. So that would be the number one thing I would recommend. You should try and gear to the content you're going into. So if you come into Adept, right, and you try and do an Adept 1, if you try and do an Adept 1, you're looking at gear level 75. So you might think, okay, well, I'm gear level 50. So if I'm level 50 and the next best item for me would be 75, so I should go and do that. You're going to have trouble. You're going to have trouble going into here. And because that's how, a lot of other MMOs work. That's how Mythic Plus kind of works. You just aim for your next eye level piece, and that's kind of how the game is balanced. In this, if you're always going for the next thing, you're going to hit big roadblocks on difficulty, because not only do they add new mechanics in each league, but they add increased, damage and monster health, stuff like that. So what I would recommend is when you get to the end of a league, when you get to like contender, and say you can farm sixes and you have pretty much 50 and 60 gear. Well, this gear can be leveled up past 60, even though that's where it ends. You can see here, look, it ends here. You don't get any more green gear after difficulty 6. So, but this level 60 gear can be upgraded 4 more times. So you can just keep doing sixes, keep getting gold. You can get all these items and just scrap them for gold, and then keep leveling them up and over gear the capstone dungeon. And then the capstone dungeon will be much easier. Or you could do what I did, and you can farm the capstone dungeons. So at the end of every league, there is a dungeon, and you can see here, these drop blue gear. So what I did is when I got to a place where I was comfortable, and I did most of this in pugs, I did most of this with like randoms, is when you get to like the contender, the very first capstone dungeon, run it, complete it. It doesn't matter if you time it or not. When you finish this for the first time, you will get 2 items. I think you always get 2 drops. So you'll get like 2 of these blue items. Don't then go, okay, sweet, I can now go into Adept, because you're going to have a really rough time. Unless you're like a really good Mythic Pluser, in which case you probably don't need a progression guide, right? But if you're struggling like I was, then I would say do this a few more times. If you run this 3 times, you'll then have 6 pieces. That's most of your gear done. Or you will have repeats. And if you have repeats, you can scrap them or you can re-roll them. So that's the first thing I would do. I was try and like run the capstones multiple times. And if you're really struggling with the capstones, run like 6s or 5s or something you feel comfortable with until you can just farm loads of that gear, scrap it all for gold, and just level up your stuff past the next tier. You can just level this to like 100 and you'll just have a much better time. I found the biggest complaints I'm seeing is people who are coming into Adept, they've got like all green gear, 2 blues or something, they're eye level like 55, and they're just getting destroyed in Adept. And they're in a group of pugs who are all in the same boat, and they're just going, Adept's too hard. It's not. You just have to put the work in at the end of the league. I think they maybe let you into the next league a little too early, but some people can do it, especially if you're in a preset group. Okay, now for specifics that you unlock as you go along. So as soon as you get into Adept, you will unlock gems and sockets. So you will get some from your rewards. So as you go through the rewards, as you go through the tree, the rewards tree, you'll get 2 different things. Like in Adept, you will get a bag of 2 small gems. In the next section, you'll get 3 small gems. Next section, you get 4 small gems, like that. And at the end of every dungeon, there is a chance for a gem to drop. So you will get this gems as you play. And then you're also going to get sockets drop at the end of your dungeons. So if you find some gear that has a small circle in the bottom right, it has a socket. You can hover over it and it says empty gem socket. So make sure you're looking to see if your items have sockets before you scrap them, because they give quite a good boost. Secondly, when it comes to sockets, gems are replaceable. You don't have to worry about using the wrong gem. So if you come to Cassian the Jeweler, who's right next to the main square, he's like just down the stairs to the right, tucked away, click on him. Gems are fully replaceable. So say you have a gem that you don't want and you don't have the one you do want, put in the one you don't want for the time being. So right here, I have a topaz in my helmet. You throw it into here, it will remove it and it will go back in your like gem bag. So you can click this little thing here and it shows your gems. So you can just drop them in and you can remove them completely freely. So don't worry about losing them or anything like that. So, and then you can just put them straight back in. Secondly, how do gems work? Well, every time you put in a gem, you get gem power for your character. And the more gem power you have, the more buffs and the more abilities and things you unlock in this tree. As you go up the tree, you need more and more gem power. So 120 will get you the base. Going all the way to the top is 2,640 gem power, right? So how do we get gem power? A small gem is like 120, a large is 240, 360 for a splendid, and 480 for a flawless. If you wanted to get all the way to the top, you would need multiple flawless gems. You can combine those gems at the guy over here. So you can see here, if you go to this guy here, you go to Gem Fusion. What you can do is you can split a gem. So you can take a gem like this and you can put it in here and you can split it and turn it into, 3 small ones, and it doesn't cost anything. You just turn it into 3 small ones and then you can put those back in and you can fuse them together. Unstable fusion, combine 3 small into a gem of the same color. You can see there, 3 small go into a normal, just like that. Now, something else you can do here, other than just combine them and break them down, you can turn them into different colored gems. So say you really wanted a sapphire, right? You could take this large ruby, put it into here, and you could do transmutation. So you could do unstable, which turns it into a random gem of a different color. So you could get any of these others. You could do an imbued one, which goes to any other gem of a different color, but you get a choice of 3. So you'll lower the risk a little bit. Or you could do an arcane one, which would turn it into any of your choice. So depending on how much materials you've got, and they all drop at the end of dungeons, and how much gold you have, because each one costs more, that's 20, that's 50, and that's 100, you can change them around like that. So you can like funnel into a certain color gem if you want to. That's how gems work. I've kind of said more than enough. The only last thing to know about gems and sockets and stuff like that is gem essence percent. So certain items will give you a boost to the gems you put in them, which is very important when it comes to deciding where to put your gem slots. So you can see here on this item here, for example, this is just a normal gem socket. A small topaz that is 120 gem essence gets you 120 gem essence, right? Whereas this ring here has an essence bonus of 35%. So if you were to put an item in here, such as a large amethyst, which is 240, you can see here we have 240 and then a little bit more. You see we have a little bit extra because we have additional gem essence. Now, if you have a legendary, so this item down here, it has essence bonus 100%. I'm covering it, but it says essence bonus, there you go, essence bonus 100% under the gem. That means that a large ruby that is 240, which would be here, gives you double, which gives you here, you would get 480. You'd get, if I look there, it says 480 additional power. So you get all the way up to here with 1 gem because it is in a 100% boosted socket. So that's a really good thing to be aware of if you're deciding what to do with your gems. But that's pretty much it on the gem system. You don't really get them until Adept, but when you get them, make sure you use them because you get some really, really good buffs. Okay, now let's talk about how to significantly boost your damage and boost your ability to perform in dungeons. So when you're coming from, the contender into like Adept, Champion, Paragon, you're going to start getting new types of items. So you're going to start getting weapon ability items. So for example, this weapon here, the Chrono Shift Bow. So this is one of the best weapons right now in terms of its ability. And the different weapons that you get will all have different abilities. They then go on your hotbar. So for example, the Chrono Shift Bow it does a bit of damage and it reduces your cooldowns by 800%. So you can see here, if I throw out a few abilities, this has a 30-second cooldown. And then if I use this, that 30-second cooldown pretty much completely goes. So I could pop like 2 volleys at the start of a fight, right? So these different weapon abilities are really, really important. So make sure you get one and make sure you equip it. And if you're going from, you know, an item that you fully upgraded and then you get one with a weapon ability, it's worth going over to that and leveling that up because it's that much worth it. It's that much extra damage and it's something you should be doing. Now then, when you come from, this is something that I totally didn't know was in the game. When you come from Adept into Champion and you start getting the purple gear, when you get a weapon ability on a purple item, you can come behind the blacksmith, behind Bjorn. You can come to the Shrine of Infusion. I didn't know this existed. I went through pretty much all of Champion before I even realized this was in the game. You can then put your weapon, your purple weapon, into the Shrine of Infusion, and you can select a ton of buffs. You can pretty much just fill out this tree. There's no like requirements to unlock these. You can just come in here and just start picking different things and placing whatever you want in here and picking up buffs that make you stronger. Now, some of them increase the damage of your weapon, they increase the damage of like your ability. Some of them give you defensives, like this one, you gain more health from stamina. You can gain stat points. You've got your offensive abilities grant you haste. Down at the end, you can have like big damage abilities. So each time you deal damage, you conjure a strike, dealing 800% primary stat damage. You've got your weapon ability generate spirit points. So, you know, your big ability will level faster, will recharge faster. So you can do lots of really good things. And then when you then move into Paragon, you can even empower these. So you can come into here and you can even level these up. So for 1,000 gold, you can level these up to, you know, get the next tier. So you can see it says like you gain 4, 5, 6, 7% more health. You can go through those tiers. So this is a big piece of like progression that you might not even know exists. So make sure you come here. And I'm pretty sure it starts at the champion gear. I don't think it's on Adept, but if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. If it does work with Adept, you know, the blue items, let me know. But I think it starts with the purple items. So make sure you're doing that. The only other thing that you need to be looking out for is legendaries. They start dropping in, I want to say they start dropping in Adept. I feel like I had one in Adept, but it may have been the Capstone dungeon. Make sure you're getting legendaries. Legendaries are a significant damage boost. So for example, the boots I'm wearing, the duration of your Starfall volley is increased by 2 seconds while it's active. Every time you cast a multi-shot, it's extended. Huge. I've also got a cloak. These have really good buffs, and they seem to have a boosted essence bonus, meaning your gems get empowered inside them. So make sure you have, I think you can have 1 legendary at a time. So make sure you have a legendary equipped if you find it, because the boost you get from the gem power and the skill itself is really good. On top of that, these drop at base 300 item level. So even when all my gear is like, you know, I've got a 180 piece, I've got some 150 legs still, I've got a 300 from my legendary. So it'll give you a good item level boost. And if you're feeling like you're behind everyone, maybe you need to equip legendary to get that big boost. Yeah, that's pretty much it on like things to look out for while gearing. Everything else is pretty straightforward. You should make the best use of this guy as well while leveling to rejig your gear. So for example, if something drops and you don't need it, make sure you're moving it around. So for example, I have some hands here. What's a good example? I have some hands here, for example, that I'm not using because I have these ones. And if I wanted to, I could put them into here and roll them to a different item. You could do an unstable reforge, which turned it into a random item. So I could turn these gloves into anything else. They could become bracers, rings, legs. You could do an imbued where they go to any other random slot, but you get a choice of 3. So you could have like helmet, chest, and bracer turn up, and you can pick which one you want. And then the best one is Arcane Reforge, where they go to the same slot. Now, why is this the best one? Because you can fish for tier sets and you can fish for your best weapon. So if you find a weapon, so for example, I found a yellow bow that dropped, and it was a bad weapon ability. It wasn't anything that I would use or was good. I took it, I put it in here, and I did an Arcane Reforge, and it gave me 3 other yellow weapons to choose from. And one of them was the Chrono Shift, which is my BIS, but for this build I'm playing. So yeah, make sure you're making use of these. If you're not having any of these drop in the dungeons, if you're getting really unlucky on drops, you come over to here to the Storekeeper Kieran, and he has these boxes, and you can buy them with the Marks of Fellowship. If you're wondering what they're for and why that you're not using them, buy them here. I got this Arcane Artisan Supply box, and that had the purple ingot, which lets you roll to the same slot. These here let you roll to the different slots. So always make sure you're rolling your items around, because it feels bad getting to a new tier. Like if you just got into like Adept, or you just got into say, like Paragon, and you got your first yellow or something, and you had to scrap it. It feels bad. So just roll it to a different item. if it's not something you want. But that's pretty much it on gearing. Hopefully that covers everything. If you have any other questions, let me know. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is in terms of like the gear progression. Okay, now for some quick gameplay tips. So regardless of your role, here's just some quick tips. I'm going to throw out loads of tips to help you improve and help you have a better dungeon experience. So number one is when you queue for a dungeon, always tick this box. If you go into the selection here and whatever you're queuing in for, before you click find game, go to the cog and press settings, only match with heroes who've reached the same difficulty as me or higher. Tick that. That means that if you've cleared a Paragon 3 or if you've cleared a Adept 3 and you're queuing in, you only want to be queued with people who have cleared an Adept 3 or higher. Now that means that you are going to be queued with people of a similar skill level and a similar gear level. Because these leagues are so broad, you could be at the end of Adept, you could be running sixes and get paired with someone who's just got in with really, really bad gear. Similarly, on top of that, it makes sure that the tanks and healers have got used to the new mechanics when they're in the dungeons. So it will help you pass and, time more dungeons. That's what I found. Now I would say if you do want to farm the low dungeons, you can just turn that off and then you can farm more of the low dungeons. But generally, if you're looking to progress and you're confident, I'd keep that ticked at all times. Okay, next let's talk about interrupts. Interrupts are the single most important thing in the game, in my opinion. They are the thing that will decide if you time a dungeon or not. And if your group is interrupting and interrupting in synergy, you will have so much more success. So if you don't know, everyone but the healers has an interrupt. Everyone but the healers should have an interrupt. I have mine bound there to 5, and you just press it and you interrupt whatever they are casting. There will be a bar, you interrupt, and you clear it. That's common sense. Now I just want to talk about some more things that you might not be aware of. When you have a target, there are some settings you can do here. If you go into your settings and you go down to interrupt targeting, you can set an interrupt target and then set a trigger the interrupt target. Now, this is something that when you get into the later, champion, Paragon, that sort of thing, everyone starts using this. Say you have a pack of mobs. So say we come up to a pack of mobs here, a tank pulls a pack of mobs, and this one here is a caster. As you're running up to the pack, everyone should do this. Everyone should press their button to target it as their interruptible target. And what you'll see is everyone's face will start appearing here. So you'll see 2 DPS and a tank will have their 3 faces here. And then what this does is it tracks your interrupt. So say we're fighting here, and say I'm fighting this mob here, and this guy starts casting, you can click and you can interrupt them. Now you can see my interrupt is on cooldown, so the other party members know that they need to interrupt. If you're in the middle, say you're in the middle of like your ultimate or something, and a big cast is about to go off and everyone's interrupt is on cooldown, you need to break whatever you're doing to interrupt that target. So that's something that you can do. Another thing you can do is you can set the interrupt trigger, which means if you're fighting this mob here, you're fighting this mob here, and this thing starts casting, you can use your trigger, Shift V, and interrupt it without, worrying about target switching, stuff like that. So that's really important. And generally, when you start getting into the harder content, you don't really have there's not really any forgiveness on the castable things. Like everything needs to be interrupted, especially on bosses, and there's certain casts that just cannot go off. So this is a really good thing to get into. Now, on top of this, lots of classes also have an AoE interrupt that you might not even be aware of. So for example, if you're playing as Alarian, the archer, he has this here. He has grappling arrow. Fire a grappling arrow that lands and pulls enemies in. Now that doesn't sound like an interrupt, but if you have all these targets here, and say 2 of them are casters, say this one and this one are both casting a spell, you can do the grappling arrow and use it like there, and it will pull them all in and interrupt all of their casts. Really, really good. Similarly, if you go on someone like Tariq, he will have one as well. He will have Intimidate. You can run up to an enemy, you can press G, and it will intimidate them all, and they'll all start running around. So all of your casters that were halfway through a cast will just be like feared. So lots of people have a second like AoE on a big cooldown, like they're like 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 120 seconds. So, learn your class, try and work out if you have any AoEs, try and work out if you have any other things that can interrupt, and make sure you're being a good part of the interrupt, schedule or like rotation. Okay, next up, relics. Relics are the same as similar to like trinkets in WoW. They are your additional abilities, and they go on your hotbar. So for example, I have 2 here, and my advice here would be use things that are going to help your group depending on your playstyle. This is a group game, and even if you're pugging with randoms, even if you're just jumping in as a solo with randoms, take things that will help based on your role. So For me, I play DPS and I play mostly solo queue or maybe duo queue, but mostly we're like plugging tanks, plugging other DPS, plugging healer, things like that. So try and find things that will help your team in the scenario you're in. If you're in a group and you're a 4-man pre-made and you all know what you're doing, you can take things like the portal, which will portal you over different obstacles, and then you can like have these really streamlined dungeon runs. You can use the chicken to turn like really intimidating mobs that cause a lot of trouble or mobs that aren't worth the time it takes to defeat them into a chicken. But then again, and you can use like a stealth one, which stealth your whole party, and you can like cloak through a big group of mobs. They're all good if you're in a pre-made or if you're in a group that are communicating, if you're in a voice call, that kind of thing. But if you're playing solo, there's not really much conversation going on, especially between like, oh, should we do this pack? Because you're against the timer. So I just take things that are best going to help each different playstyle. I take the Sanctuary, which is a damage reduction. If you know when big damage is coming, if you know when a big AoE is coming, you pop that. 15% damage reduction can really help the party out. And then I take the Revive a teammate that goes down. So if you're playing a DPS, that's really good because if a healer goes down, you can just instantly bring them back and you can save a run. I've saved tons of boss fights just by reviving the healer, and the tank can like stay alive for a few seconds. Healer gets straight back up, starts healing again. In some fights, you can also revive the tank if you can like get away. Some bosses don't directly target the tank, so you can sometimes get the tank up. That's what I take. If you're playing a healer, you can take things like the mana potion, which, you know, will save you from constantly going, hey guys, I need mana. You can constantly like be in charge of your own mana regen, and you can have more uptime on your mana. It can also help you get through harder fights where you're having to use abilities more on like lesser geared tanks, things like that. So yeah, try and find things that are going to best help your team rather than just running stats. You know, oh, I'm taking this because it's got haste on it, or I'm taking this because it has my best stat on. So that would be the advice on that. And then the final tip I would say is this site is really helpful. Method.gg, they're a well-known gaming group. They were well-known in WoW for like being high-end raiders. And the reason this is a good resource is because you pick your character. So for example, Alarion, you go on Alarion, and they have a talent builder. So you can say, you know, I currently have 7 talent points. This is what they suggest. And then they also have dungeon guides. So if you are struggling with a dungeon, you can go to the dungeon guide, pick the dungeon, and it will tell you, you know, what the trash does, what should be interrupted, what you need to look out for. And then if you are a tank and you're absolutely clueless, please use a dungeon route. If you want to get better and you want to improve and you're pushing it past like adept and further, using a dungeon route is so good. Because whether a dungeon is timed or not is mostly due to a tank. If a tank does a bad route, if a tank is pulling one mob at a time, or they're pulling like, you know, 4 packs and then just causing a wipe because they weren't ready for it, we're not going to time the dungeon. No matter what a DPS does or a healer does, the tank has so much control over how good the timing is done. And things like this show you what routes they recommend. These are like pro players, and they would recommend a route. So for example, they say like, go here, grab these 3 packs as your first thing, then grab these 2 packs, come over here, grab these 2, grab these, grab this cluster on its own, grab this on its own, and then, you know, come through and you'll have 100% completion and you can go to the boss. It's kind of a good way to learn. Yeah, I'm going to wrap it up there. Hopefully something in here was useful. Hopefully you found this a little bit helpful. I'm just seeing a lot of people say that, you know, the progression is too hard, or the certain steps are too challenging and they want it changing, or they're asking for, you know, for them to make it easier. And I just wanted to maybe help explain why some of these roadblocks, you know, can be, how to avoid them, and how maybe you're not taking, you know, use of everything possible to get over these certain dungeons. Yes, there are certain dungeons and certain capstone dungeons that are much easier than others. For example, the one to get into Challenger, I found really hard, especially against the time. But generally, there is a lot of things you can do to improve and to make this game a lot easier. I'm loving Fellowship so far. I'm having a blast, and I'm going to keep playing it. And I hope you're enjoying it too. If you have any questions, let me know down below. If you like the style of video, do consider subscribing to the channel. All that stuff. Thanks a lot. Take care. Goodbye.